Welcome to Bad Law, Worst Facts. I'm your host, Michael Tackler. Today I have a good friend of mine, Jacob Karam, on. He's here to talk about a over $3 million verdict that he just got. And Jacob is not one to be in his 40s or 50s. He's actually the same class as me. We graduated from U of H. You were the class speaker, weren't you?
Yes, I was, Mike, and thank you so much for
Yeah.
having me on, man. I'm happy to be here.
So let me tell you a little bit about this guy. So first of all, you played a little bit of pro football. You were at Texas Tech as a QB, right?
That's
As
right. Yep,
well.
I played
Yeah.
for Coach Leach and then transferred and played at Memphis my last 2 years. That's right.
That's right. And then you played for the Packers for a little bit of time, right? As a
Yeah, a little
backup.
bit. I got invited to rookie mini camp. Didn't end up making the team, but it was a great
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. I mean, hey, look, man, you would have been back up to Aaron Rodgers at the time, so I don't know if that would have been super helpful, but that's okay.
They ended up
You know,
making a good choice. Aaron's a good. They ended up making the right choice, I think.
so what's really cool to me? So you and I know each other for a while, and in school at U of H, you do this mock. We do a mock trial, right? And I think it was a mock trial class. I don't think you were on the team. It was some class that you're doing. And man, so you're like, "Hey, Mike, can you be a witness for me?" I said, "Yeah, sure." What time is it at? Oh, it's 6 o'clock at the courthouse. Yeah, sure. So I go there, and I'm this witness. And so I sit there at the back, and you start doing the voir dire, everything's like that, and then I see about 6, 7 people. They all look somewhat related in a pod. They all definitely look Lebanese, like you. And I'm like, what's going on here? So find out it's your whole family. You brought the whole tribe down to watch you do this mock trial. And I'm like, okay, it's pretty cool. So then after the voir dire, you come back to your tribe and you're talking to your dad. And your dad's like, you should have struck this guy. You should have done this, da, da, da. And you're sitting there. He's like, no, judge said, I got it struck, but we're just keeping him because we have enough people to do this today. Da, da, da. And I'm over here like trying to like tap you, like, hey man, this is fake, right? This isn't a real trial. And so the, what I'm getting at is that intensity, you've always brought it, and I love that about you. You've always brought that from day one. I don't know if it's because you were in such a intense sport before, a very competitive sport, that you've brought that to be a lawyer, but it's really impressive, and that's the reason why 5 6 years out, you're getting $3 million verdicts and doing really well. But look, I had you come on here today to talk about this verdict because it was just really interesting. It's a pretty conservative county, and it's a premises case, right? Now, it's not a slip and fall, but it is a premises case, and those are pretty tough already. Juries don't really like to give too much money about it, but tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, sure. First of all, going back to that law school story, I need to thank you again for coming in and volunteering and being a witness for us. It's an
No,
honor.
you're fine.
Listen, my claim to fame is I'm one of the top Middle Eastern lawyers, along with you, brother. So you know how we can be competitive. And man, my dad, whether it's football or trial, whatever, he's instilled that intensity. My whole family has. So you know how it is. So again, thanks for having me,
Yeah,
man. I appreciate it.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah, so this was a case. Believe it or not, it was an active negligence case. It wasn't a premises case.
Okay.
A little bit about the facts was that my client was sitting down at dinner at a Texas Roadhouse up in Mansfield, Texas, when a host lifted a chair over my client's head and inadvertently hit a ceiling fan, and the fan blade broke while it was turning and came and hit my client in the neck, shoulder area.
Oof.
And so my client's sitting there. She's in a lot of pain. She reported that she was in pain to the restaurant right away. Ended up
Yeah.
going to the hospital that night and complained of pain to her neck and her shoulder. Ends up going to the hospital, like I said, and goes back to Louisiana where she's from, begins her medical treatment, and unfortunately, just wasn't getting any lasting relief from any type of conservative treatment. So after about 9 months of trying everything else, she ends up having a surgery, which no one wants to do. And thankfully for her, it provided some relief, and ended up having a shoulder surgery as well. And is kind of having her good days and bad days now, doing the best that she can. And so the
Yeah.
case was filed in Tarrant County. Um, uh, we ended up trying the case in May. It was a 3-day trial. The defense, Texas Roadhouse, challenged causation and damages heavily. They didn't think that a lot of the medical care was medically necessary, and
Shocker.
really, yeah, and really tried to
Right.
say that the surgeries were not necessary. The jury listened to the evidence and delivered what I think was a just verdict and an appropriate verdict. So we're just grateful and super happy for my client. And the verdict was
So
3.15
tell me a
million.
little bit about. Oh, see, I cut you short, huh? About
Just to make sure
what,
you got that in there, Mike.
1.5 or something like that. One. I'm sure the verdict search will tell you that, right?
Yes.
Um, what do you think? What do you think won this case for you? I mean, every I think we all know our the weakness of a case, the strength of a case. What's really good? We're gonna kind of cling on. What was it for you?
That's a great question. Obviously, years of hard work of pouring into the case and getting it ready. I think as trial lawyers, we understand the importance of preparation, just like a football game, just like anything else, the preparation. At trial, I think that the jury really saw and what a genuine person my client was. I mean, she was seriously injured. She came across as just very
Yeah.
genuine. She told the truth. She said exactly what happened. And she was just consistent all the way throughout this case. I mean, she got hit with the fan blade. Her neck and her shoulder were hurting her. She tried everything else. And, we heard for 2 years about how conservative Tarrant County was and how we weren't going to get full justice up there. But
Yeah.
thankfully, our experience was just totally different. And so, I think it came down to the client being so genuine and doing everything that we could to tell her story to the jury.
It's something that I've said on this podcast probably like I don't know 10 times now that a lot of attorneys kind of skip over the plaintiff depot, kind of really prepping the client for those things. And in my opinion, that's you know one of the if not the best thing you can do is to prep your client thoroughly to really see how your client is because realistically a lot of times your client can be a sincere person but they're not going to come off that way because they may be nervous or something's going on. So um, realistically even the best defense attorney is going to be at least a little bit scared when they find someone that they think a jury is going to like them. And
Absolutely.
so
And you asked the question of what won the case. I think a lot of it goes to the client of just being a genuine, real person, and just
yeah.
nothing short of that. It's like kids. You can't fool kids and you can't fool juries, good or bad. You can listen. We all get intimidated sometimes of what opposition will say or not say, of what the jury's going to say or the judge will think or this or that. At the end of the
Yeah.
day, the jury's going to more times than not, they're going to see it for what it is. And thankfully they did exactly that here.
So did you have a training providers come down?
We did, yeah. So she had two surgeons, a shoulder orthopedic surgeon and a neurosurgeon that did the 3-level fusion that came in
Yeah.
from Lafayette, Louisiana, up to Fort Worth, Texas. And you know, the thing I learned is that everyone, whoever takes the stand, a doctor, you got to be yourself because the jury's going to see that. One of our doctors kind of had a dry personality and was, um, a little more on that side. The other one was a little funnier, and the jury listened to them both.
Yeah.
And I think when you have a live doctor there that can explain, hey, here are my goals whenever I'm treating a patient. Here's how I felt like was the best way to do it. Here's exactly what happened, and ultimately it was successful. Um,
Yeah.
and they say their stories in terms that the juries can understand, and I think that was helpful as well.
Because it's true to them. Like you can explain something better if it's the way you think of things. You're not just trying to fake think you're the way you are just to make someone happy. So I definitely get that. The way I explain something versus the way you would or anyone else. Um, it may be better, may not be better, but it's true to who you are, and that makes
That's
a huge
exactly right.
difference.
A hundred
Yeah.
percent. 100%.
Did she have any like pre-existing conditions before this?
So it was, yes, she did. She had some degenerative changes, which we all have.
We all have that. Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. She had some degenerative changes in her body, but they were asymptomatic at the time of this incident, meaning they weren't causing her any pain or any problems. Just like
Sure.
you and I, we could have some degeneration in our shoulders, our neck, our back, our knee, whatever, that's not causing us any problems, especially you, Mike. I know how much you work out, and you're like an Olympic power lifter now. So, you seem to not be having any issues at all with your strength levels. But certainly, all of us are having, every day that we live, we walk and we work out or whatever. But she was not symptomatic at the time of this incident. So the
Yeah.
defense really harped on, hey, look at her MRI images, look at her X-rays, look at how all this stuff is pre-existing. Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
Thankfully, the law protects us. It says that if a condition is asymptomatic at the time of an event, a car wreck, a slip and fall, whatever, blunt force trauma, which is the medical
Yeah.
term of what caused the mechanism of injury, blunt force trauma to the neck. Um, if a symptom is asymptomatic, or a condition's asymptomatic, and it becomes symptomatic or begins to cause you problems, pain, whatever, then
Right.
that becomes recoverable. That becomes a part of your damages that you're entitled to recover for.
Yeah. A pre-existing condition exacerbated by, this incident, right? It's it's kind of weird to me. So the degenerative disease argument, again, we've done like 30 plus episodes at this point. Every single time, what do the experts harp on? Degenerative disease. But you're exactly right. I mean, when you do that, you pivot. Keith Mitnick also said this, right? You pivot and you say, okay, sure, let's talk about degenerative disease. Let's talk about these things. Can the defense at any point in time in this trial point to a time where my client said, I have 9 or 10 out of 10 pain in this area before this incident, right? And if the answer
Absolutely.
is no, they can't, then I think their degenerative disease argument is gone,
Mhm.
right? It's there has to be something to cause the pain, no matter what. So, and for them to say, well, look at the MRIs. When we talked about off air, I mean, did their defense expert look at the MRIs before
Yeah,
deciding his opinion?
that's a very good point. Is if they want to say degenerative disease, then embrace it. Say yeah, and what that does is that predisposes you. So like in some of these minor car wrecks that we see, or quote unquote
Yeah,
minor car wrecks, or things like that. Yeah, when you have those conditions, you're predisposed to it. You're even
right.
more susceptible or more prone to having an injury because you have that condition. So I think that's one thing I learned. Embrace it. Learn
Yeah,
how to embrace it and frame it to tell your client's story, because the jury will understand that. In our case, as you mentioned, the defense hired two experts that wrote expert reports that basically said that my client didn't suffer traumatic injury, and a lot of the
right.
surgeries weren't medically necessary. And both of them wrote their reports before they actually laid eyes on my client's MRI images. And
God.
anybody sitting in a jury box or whatever can understand that, like, hey, if something were to happen to me, and I would go and see a doctor to get medical care and advice, I surely would want them to look at
Yeah.
my MRI images too, and not just guess, right? You wouldn't,
I mean,
you wouldn't,
yeah.
yeah, you wouldn't ask a jury
Yeah.
for a verdict. You wouldn't ask a jury for a verdict after voir dire before they've seen any evidence or any of the pictures. So
Right.
that's kind of what they did, and they based their opinions kind of off of her medical records alone, and had later looked at the MRI images and explained that they didn't really change their opinions, which okay,
Of course.
but again, it's about looking at everything and telling your client's story. So that's what we tried to do.
So I think that really helps you with the so I have this theory. I don't know if it's right or wrong. You help me out. But so one, I try not to use the term defense expert. I try to use the term paid opinion witness. It's something I picked up from Michael Cowan. But two, I do think when you had two good treating providers, two people who were straight up about everything. They're from Lafayette. I know a lot of times the Lafayette surgeons are a little bit more conservative on certain things. So that's always good. Um, and then you've got two defense experts who are saying, I didn't even look at the MRI, but I don't really care. Uh, I am, being paid by this person, and this person needs me to say X. I generally think that infuriates the jury more than anything. So if you've got a sincere client and you're able to get the jury a little bit more annoyed at these defense tactics, that's how you end up with decent verdicts. It's actually really, I haven't had one yet. I haven't had a defense expert just lay down and say, Mike, you're right. Uh, but if that happens, I think I'd be a little bit more frustrated than happy, right? Because then it's like, I have hit them so hard that I've ended up designating them as my experts, and defense isn't
That's
happy with that.
impressive.
But I think that's always very helpful. What? Tell me about the. I can imagine the opening, but I think
Mhm.
we've got all this evidence. You got this stuff going.
Sure.
I'm sure closing was tough. Depending on what you could and couldn't do in a conservative county. They're not going to
Mhm.
take. I don't know what they did. I don't want to get into what they did, but I assume they don't
Mhm.
take the demonstrative evidence argument for a lot of things into account. So you've got to really harp on your evidence. Tell me about the closing.
So right before closing, the Texas Roadhouse brought in a manager to testify that we'd never deposed
Okay.
before, and she got up there and basically said that the I couldn't even fully under. I'll be honest, I couldn't even fully understand what she was saying. She said something to the effect of that the fan blade didn't really hit her, or it wasn't that hard, or she didn't appear to be injured. All this kind of stuff. And
Right.
so one of the very first things I did in closing was like you said, we didn't have any. We just had the exhibits in a binder, literally right there. And
Right.
the advantage to that is it was me making eye contact with those 12 people in that box, and it was just us. There was nothing in between. It was us just having a
Right.
conversation like we were
No
sitting in
PowerPoint.
the
No. Yeah. No
nothing,
fancy
zero.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We were talking in the living room, man, just about what happened last week, and you know what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
so I picked up that incident report that was my exhibit number one, and I said, right when this accident happened, my client they asked my client to write down her version of the story right here. And if
Yeah.
she ever deviated in the last 2 years from this story, they would have put this and shoved it down her throat and reminded her of what she said. And then I flipped it
Yeah.
around like this, and I was like, I don't see anywhere where this manager was asked to do the same thing. She's in here trying to do damage control and cleanup duty at the end of
Yeah.
this trial. And so it was just little things like that in closing that I think actually made a difference. I didn't have a PowerPoint, I didn't have anything like that, but it was just that one-on-one talking and dialogue of, hey, listen, I told y'all from the beginning this was a simple case. At
Yeah.
the end of the day, it's about full responsibility, taking full
Yeah.
responsibility. When you go to a restaurant and order a meal, they make you take responsibility for that full meal. You don't get to pick and choose or negotiate the price. They're standing up here saying that they take full liability, but they're not. They've refused to take full responsibility. And so here's what the evidence shows that the damages
Yeah.
are, and we're asking for full justice. And so thankfully, they deliberated for about an hour and a half. They delivered a unanimous verdict, and we were just happy for my client.
So, did you ask him for a number?
I did. I asked for 5 million. Um,
Okay.
that's what we asked for. The
That's good.
jury returned 3.15,
That's
which
perfect.
was
Yeah.
which was lower than what we asked for, and ultimately we trusted them to do the right thing. And I told them, I said, look, here's what I think, but y'all have listened to this evidence.
Yeah.
Y'all were selected to be the jury on this case. Y'all do what y'all feel like is right. And I told them, I said, I trust you, and my client trusts you. So and we felt like they'd do the right thing, and thankfully they did.
I think it's definitely a lot more than what was on the table before. Yeah.
Certainly was many, many,
Yeah.
many times before. And it's funny. I'm not going to get into all the numbers or whatever, but
Yeah.
what I would,
Yeah.
it's always, and Mike, you know this, it's always in the client's best interest to try to settle a case for a fair amount,
Right.
rather than go and try the case. It just
Right.
is. It's more certainty. It resolves it. But there's sometimes, as you know, where they don't give you a choice. And this was one of those
Yeah.
times where we really weren't given a choice. My client didn't want to be sitting there in a courthouse, but we didn't have a choice. And so looking back, maybe it was a blessing in disguise, but we really didn't have a choice to settle, a chance to settle.
Yeah. You say choice, but I think it's like I think they only gave you one choice, right? And it's a very simple one that you could pick.
No
So,
question.
um, that's awesome, man. That's fantastic. I know that, man. So it's what's interesting about your track record as well too is that so you're on your own. We're about what 6 years out? I forget. Sometimes I think I'm 1 year out. Well, sometimes I feel like I'm 100 years out.
So we
So,
graduated in 2017. So I think
17.
in November we'll have completed our 6 year, right?
6 year. That's right. The only reason why I know is I noticed last year all of a sudden there was like a bump on my bar dues and stuff, and I was like, "What is going on here?"
I feel like
um,
the young lawyer firms are better.
yeah. Um, so
Speaking of
You know,
law school, real quick, I will say I don't know if you've toured the new law school at U of H. It's beautiful. My
I
brother
haven't.
Justin, who you've met, is
Yeah.
he just finished his first year at Thurgood Marshall,
Yeah.
and was at the top of his class and just got accepted this last week. We found out, so he's
Oh,
transferring to
awesome.
U of H, and so we did a little tour last week and got to catch up with Dean Baines, and it was, let me see. Mike, you remember what it was like when you and I were studying down in the
Man,
boonies, down in
it's a
that
lot of
space
smells,
pit?
man. A lot of a lot of smells. You know,
Yeah.
if it was raining, you know, you would hear drips in the library at
Oh,
like 1 o'clock in the morning, and you're like, okay, if this ghost is here, just take me out, man. Like I'm
yeah.
done. You know,
Let me
the
tell you,
funeral room smelled bad. Like man, especially around when we got to finals time, no one's showering, so it's
for
just
sure.
all these smells. I got
Trust me
sick of
when
Jimmy Johnson Subway.
oh yeah,
So
exactly. Trust me when I tell you, they're not dealing with those issues anymore. If you,
really,
oh my
yeah,
goodness, it's beautiful. It's a school, and I told Dean Baines, I was like, now this school is reflective of how good U of H is. Like
yeah.
our ranking and the amount of the caliber of lawyers that school has produced. Now this is a school and a building and a facility that is reflective of that. You know,
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad to hear that because you look at our rankings and you go to like other places like Baylor and all that stuff, and you're like, these are beautiful campuses. And you go to ours, you're like, y'all don't even know where to park. Uh,
no, no, it's
it's
really nice.
beautiful. That's
Oh man,
awesome.
stunning. But anyways, yeah, we're 6 years out now.
6 years out. I mean, during that time period. So one thing for young attorneys and other attorneys out there, I mean, I really like that you kind of put yourself in like your own vacuum. So you did big law for like I think it was like maybe a year or something, and then you went to
Less. Yeah.
this
Mhm.
personal injury law firm, super aggressive guys. I know only know because I clerked there, in law school, the most aggressive and probably in the nation. Hustled your way, learned how to do everything there, and then went off on your own, and now you're doing it just like that. And I don't know, man. I think that's awesome. I also think that's one of the reasons why you could, you know, be like a lone gunner on these cases and just go try them. I think most people would be scared to ask for $5 million on a case 6 years out.
I so I was at Lock Lord for about 8 months. Then I went to Arnold and
Yeah,
Itkin, which you know what those guys are like. You worked there too while
yeah,
we were in law school, I remember. And so
yeah,
really, really grateful to them. I mean, I feel like I just got really good training and insight on how to try a case to a jury. And you're right. I mean, it prepared me for this case and for a lot of the things that we do as trial attorneys. So,
yeah,
and again, it goes back to what we were talking about. As great as those guys are, I am not Kurt Arnold. I'm not Jason Itkin. I'm not Kyle Finley. I feel like maybe, hopefully, one day, if I keep working, I'll have some of those qualities that those guys have.
yeah.
But the thing that you learn is if you try to be somebody that you're not, it's not going to work. You got to
Not gonna
really
work.
find your own voice and be yourself. And I think that the jury can see that and appreciate that. And that's when you're going to be the most comfortable, you know. And,
Yeah.
and when we're comfortable and you're prepared, then that's going to give yourself the best chance of success. So um, grateful to the whole A&I Arnold and Nitkin team for just the experience I got to have and the things I got to
Yeah.
see. But you learn, man. No matter where you've been or what you've done, you better be yourself.
So what's the next thing for you?
I'm gonna we're building right now. We're growing. We're down
Yeah.
in Sugarland, uh, and when I say growing, I mean we're getting good cases and continuing
Yeah.
to build our presence down here. And you know, when I opened this firm, I wanted to be kind of a Fort Bend County firm, and we get
Yeah.
cases in Houston and Louisiana and Austin and Dallas, and so we're selective on the types of cases that we get, but we generally have a simple approach. We're going to try to do the best that we can for every case and give it the individualized attention that will set it up for success.
So
And if we feel like we need to go try a case to a jury, we're happy to do that too. So
yeah,
um,
I gotta say, just a shout out to you. I gave you a dog of a case in Louisiana when you first started out, and you knocked it out the park. I mean, I still think about it every once in a while. Like just 2 o'clock in the morning, I just wake up I'm like, how the hell did he do it on this dumb case? Like it makes no sense. I can't get into the facts too much because I think there's a confidentiality in there. But
sure, sure,
I
sure.
mean, it's great, terrible, terrible facts. Didn't think it was worth very much, and you knocked it out the park.
But you know what we learned, Mike? When you have two Middle Eastern young U of H lawyers on a file, man, good things are just bound to happen. So thank you for giving me the chance to do that, and that that was fun. But you get a lot of credit for that too, brother.
So look, man, I appreciate it. And the reason why I say that is a shout out to, if anyone who has any case in Louisiana, any case in Fort
Sure.
Bend, because I know there's very few law firms that I know that actively, I mean, that actively practice in Fort Bend.
Sure.
There's, like a law firm like ours that will have a case in Fort Bend or something.
Sure.
But if I have more than 10 cases in Fort Bend, it's kind of weird for me. For
Sure.
you, it's, doing it. So, I mean, if anyone wants to reach out to you for either a Louisiana case or a case in Fort Bend, or honestly, even a Harris County case that you can knock out the park for them,
Yeah.
how would they get in contact
I,
with
I
you?
tell people this too. I'm from Friendswood, Texas, and which
Yeah.
is in Galveston County, and so that's where I spent, my childhood and playing football and everything. So I'm comfortable
Yeah.
down there as well. But it's like you said, man. It's look, this case I just tried was in Fort Worth. It was in Tarrant County. I mean,
Yeah.
we feel like we're equipped to take a good case and take it all the way, no matter where it is, in Texas or Louisiana. And so, yeah, the best way to get in contact with us is call the office. Let's talk and figure out if this is an opportunity that would work for both parties.
Absolutely, man. It's been really awesome having you on, man. And again, congrats. I really mean it. I'm a little jealous, but that's a good thing. It's a really good
No,
thing.
man,
So,
listen, I just wish I would have had you by my side. God knows what we could have done together. The young Egyptian and the young Lebanese, we're an alliance, my
all right, man. You take care of yourself.